Hottie, last episode, we talked about my favorite Floyd's of Leadville products, the stuff I use as part of my training and recovery every day. I use the warming balm on my quads, hams, and calves before over and under efforts. I use the recovery protein mix after endurance rides, and I use the 50 milligram full spectrum soft gels more or less every night to help me get a good night's sleep. This time, it's your turn.
Yeah, I'm predominantly a Floyd's guy for sleep. I mean, I lean on Floyd's for sleep regularly, especially these days. I have just enough anxiety. What I'm doing with anxiety, I don't know. It's just this baggage that somebody hands you, says, here, hold this for a while. But I get this little anxiety thing. It's nothing serious, just enough, to I lay in bed and I try to get to sleep, but my brain is just too busy with stuff and dumb stuff too. I mean, I'm thinking about, did I set up my tubeless tires right? Did I, who knows? Any number of things. Did I edit that podcast correctly? Does Fatty still like me? All these things kind of come up. Well, Floyd's capsules and tinctures helps get rid of that stuff.
Well, I can answer two of those questions. You did edit the podcast correctly, and Fatty does still like you. But we are obviously not just big promoters of Floyd's. We're customers, and Floyd's of Leadville wants to treat us and the rest of its customers, the listeners to the podcast, to a 15% discount on all of our orders. At checkout, use the code FATTY to get a 15% reduction in your total. Put your order together right now at floydsofleadville.com.
Okay, another reason to be anxious. I want me involved in this promo code too. We need a hottie code, don't we?
I don't believe there is one, but so don't use the hottie code, folks. But I will talk to them, and we will see if which of the two of us gets used more. Meantime, thanks Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsors of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 4 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I'm Fatty, and I always look forward to Hottie's recitation of our tagline each episode because it is not a joke. It is worth thinking about some of the key words here: highest, hardest, and freaks you out.
That's right, Fatty. With this race, there is no guarantee you'll finish at all, much less in the time you target. Something can go wrong with your bike. The altitude can knock you sideways, or more often than anything else, you can get your nutrition wrong, leading to a bad stomach or a bonk.
That is why we are partnering with our longtime sponsor, The Feed, to create this new show segment called Feed Fails. Text or call in your own feed fail, a short story about 30 seconds long, telling us how you got your nutrition spectacularly wrong in a race or a training situation, and send that to our Leadville podcast hotline, 719-453-1514.
And we have our first feed fail for this season, texted to us by Jim Keene. He said in 2018, my first Leadville, I really wanted to get my fueling right. So I rode with Morton's 320 in my bottles and a couple of GU Roctanes for each hour of riding. And then I worked that plan hard. By hour 10, he says he felt terrible, like really bad, really down in the dumps. He couldn't eat again until 8:30 on Sunday night in Kearney, Nebraska, not even Colorado. He had to leave the state to eat anything.
He could not stomach Colorado anymore, apparently. And that is a great feed fail, Hottie, because Jim, he got things so close to getting it right. Those are great products for racing. And alone or together, they could have fueled Jim to a great day.
Yeah, this is a classic too much of a good thing feed fail. If you're knocking back 320 calories from Morton's and 100 calories twice an hour from GU Roctane, you are trying to get down 500 calories per hour. And at a Leadville altitude and effort, it's a very rare athlete who can process that many calories.
Yeah, we are all burning 500 calories plus per hour, but at race pace, your stomach is unlikely to be able to digest more than 200 or 300 calories per hour. More than that, you start feeling bad. And the solution is, during training, find out how much and what you can eat at tempo for hours on end. This is an experiment that you have to conduct on long, difficult training rides. You can't find this out during the first 2 hours of a ride.
Mm-hmm. But you can learn how much and for how long you can eat this way. And that will pay big dividends at about Twin Lakes Dam inbound when you see other racers starting to fall off because their own feed fails are starting to catch up to them.
Yeah, that's when they catch up to me. So find out how much you can eat at a sustained rate per hour, and then realize you can only put so much into your own personal funnel per hour. Anything more than that just spills out the top like a real funnel. Start with 250 calories per hour as a rule of thumb, and then tweak from there.
And be sure to try out the products mentioned by Jim here. His mistake wasn't what, but how much. Now, Morton 320 and Goo Octane are both fantastic products in moderation. And you can get them both at thefeed.com/Leadville with a nice 15% discount for listening to the show.
Yeah. Send us your own feed fails to the Leadville Podcast Hotline, 719-453-1514. And if we use your feed fail on the show, like we did with Jim Keen's, our friends at the Feed will send you a nice little prize, a very nice box of assorted products from the Feed. You might find out exactly what you need for a banner day in Leadville.
Meantime, go to thefeed.com/Leadville for a 15% discount on everything at the Feed. And thanks to the Feed for sponsoring this segment of the show.
Speaking of fails, Hottie, this episode is all about what some people would call a Leadville bike fail, while others might call it one of the best bike wins of all time.
That's right, Fatty. This episode, that is an answer to a question we have asked a number of times, and our listeners have too. Is the Leadville 100 actually a great gravel bike course? Like a lot of our listeners, I do a fair amount of gravel riding and have conducted the Leadville on a gravel bike thought experiment a few times. And then I found a guy who, along with a few of his friends, has taken this way beyond the thought experiment stage.
Yeah, that's Stephen Fitzgerald of Boulder, Colorado. He's the owner of Rodeo Adventure Labs, a very small bike company with some very capable gravel racing bikes, set out to race the Leadville 100 on his trail donkey, not just trying to finish, but in search of a Sub-8 race time.
All right, Stephen Fitzgerald is our guest. He's the owner of Rodeo Adventure Labs. Stephen, you don't call Rodeo, I guess, a bike brand, do you? You call it an adventure lab. Could you explain that?
Yeah, well, originally we weren't a bike company at all. When we started the team, Rodeo Adventure Labs, in 2014, it had no intention of becoming a bike company. There were no plans at all for anything that we were doing. We were just riding bikes as a small group of friends, and we threw up a WordPress template and started taking a lot of pictures of what we were doing and writing about it, and that built kind of a following. We had some core values and things that we put up on the website, which I think are still there unedited from 2014, which I have a to-do list to update those, but it's kind of nostalgic just to leave it all. And it was just really high degree of fatigue from organized kind of road cycling culture and racing culture, just how kind of strict and regimented it can be, and more interested in getting into, not trouble, but a little bit getting into trouble on bikes and experimenting. And just, if we want to do a mountain bike race, we'll do a mountain bike race. If we want to do road, we'll do road. And really, we just wanted to ride with about a half dozen to a dozen friends and all have kind of the same jersey. And it was ours and nobody could tell us what to do. That was rodeo. That's still the DNA, I think, actually, which is probably how we all got here. And part of the way into rodeo, I was building a bike for myself. I had been riding a lot of trails on my cyclocross bike here in the Front Range and outside of Denver, out of fatigue of sort of my road riding options just being really repetitive. And it reminded me of that sort of early to mid 90s mountain biking style that I had sort of come into the sport with rigid bikes and not a lot of driver's aids, things like that. And I liked it a lot, but the bike was a little, under equipped for really technical terrain. And, the cantilever brakes, you're just dead at the bottom of a descent. Your hands are locked up. And so I wanted bigger tires and better gearing and better brakes. And I did a quick scan. I think there were some people sort of starting to move in that space in 2014. But I didn't really want to do anything off the shelf because that's kind of the DNA of Rodeo, and the team was just, we're going to do it our way. So I found a super generic open mold frame. I'm pretty sure it was on Alibaba. I just read through all the forums, these obscure forums about all right, what's the best generic frame that everybody likes? And there's a little community of people out there that like to kind of skirt brands and do it themselves. So I picked up the best one. It had clearance for, decent, larger than cyclocross tires. And I had the factory modify it for a dropper post. And then that was sort of the first bike that I built for myself and a couple of friends. Of course, we showed it to everyone. And there were like-minded people out there that said, this is the kind of bike that I've been trying to build or that I want, kind of a quiver killer one bike to do it all, monster cross, all these things that were being thrown around. And I said, well, tough, because we're not a bike company and I am not going to, lose my life savings on a bike company. Just bike companies struggle, even good ones. I mean, the big ones are huge, right? But the little mid-sized ones and the tiny ones, they come and go, even the really cool ones. And I just saw that I would be a casualty of that, no matter how good the bike was. And it was a niche bike. But the inquiries were relentless and increasingly so. I took it to the Crested Butte 40 mountain bike race. I remember I put on Instagram, I was like, hey, I've got my Yeti mountain bike, and then I've got the donkey. Which one should I take, everybody? And it's just, everyone's cruel. And they were like, hey, you got to take the donkey, and I think they just wanted to see what happened. So I did that. And as we just did more and showed that bike more people wanted it. And finally, I got to a point around September where I just thought, I think maybe rodeo could be a business. And we've done the hardest part of creating a business, which is just really getting people to care and to see what you're doing and be interested in it. Like, the product is difficult, but if I had just showed up and said, I made a bike, then, and no one knew we were there, no one would have cared or had any reason to do it. But the bike came out of fun. So that's sort of where the bike came from and how we eventually started moving towards being a bike company. It was a journey.
You avoided being a bike company as long as you possibly could. It sounds like you kind of painted yourself into a bike company corner. Now, you alluded to the Trail Donkey.
Yeah.
And I think, that's your flagship bike. For those of the audience who don't really know it, describe the bike for us.
Well, now it's a fairly common concept. The highly capable gravel bike with very generous tire clearance, if you're talking about a drop bar bike. At the time, it was definitely a freak show kind of idea. And again, other people, I don't want to take credit for we invented this, but we were early to the concept, I think. It hadn't hit mainstream. So it's, carbon, fairly light, disc brakes. It's overbuilt compared to maybe other gravel bikes, specifically because it's the Trail Donkey. And it's, I did Leadville on it, and you can't have your bike breaking halfway through a race. So it's stout, fits huge tires, great gearing, great brakes, all of the modern amenities. And it was a stroke of luck, not genius, that was what I wanted to do, because then the market showed up, right? And the gravel scene showed up, and everyone looked over and said, oh, you make a gravel bike? And I said, I do. And it was wonderful. The entire company has been built on the growth of this genre, which I'm very thankful for. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's a gravel bike. We have a gravel racing team that races this bike, and yeah, that's what it is.
Stephen, like you alluded to, you entered the Trail Donkey and yourself into the Leadville Trail 100, and you finished with a great time, I might say, folks. In fact, that's why Stephen is here. I want to repeat, Stephen is here because yours truly, me, Hottie, has long believed that some type of rigid bike could do well at Leadville, and you could have fun at Leadville, despite what a lot of folks may think about the race, that it's a mountain bike only race, that you need a mountain bike, that you need some type of suspension. This race can be done on a rigid bike. Steven is Exhibit A, and that's why we have brought him here as evidence today, folks. He turned an 8:10, 8 hours, 10 minutes, 20 seconds at Leadville. Not only Steven, but 3 of his friends also did quite well at Leadville. Chris Magnotta on a rodeo bike also did a gold buckle time of 8:28.04. And trail donkey rider Nicholas Gilroy, 8:45.35. And David Hornick, who I think is one of your customers, Stephen, a 10:53.58. So 4 finishers that year in 2018. Now, Stephen, 2018 was not your first time at Leadville, nor was it the trail donkeys' first time at Leadville. Is that correct?
That's right. I first did it, was that maybe 2015, I think? And I did it on a Yeti mountain bike. It had a blast. There was nothing wrong with that experience. It was a really good day.
Hardtail or full suspension?
It was full suspension. It was an ASR.
So you've really swung the pendulum on this. I mean, you full suspension and a not a cross bike, a gravel bike.
Yeah. I think that was part of what was really interesting about trying this was, all right, I know, the year that I did it first, I took it very seriously and I trained, and then I went to the 50, and that's how I got into the 100. The 50 in Leadville, you can do it, and if your time is quick enough, you get that token that you can get into the 100, and that got me into a good corral. So that year, I took seriously and had a good race, had a flat, but that wasn't so bad. And then I said, that was just good from start to finish. I think I've sort of answered the question, what am I capable of at Leadville? And that sort of, I just put that on the shelf and was happy to have that memory. And then as the trail donkey sort of came along, Jared Gruber, a friend of mine, he's a pretty well-known cycling photographer. He showed up, just happened to be in August in the United States, back from Europe, close with World Bicycle Relief, who had a fleet of athletes doing it that year. And then he just called me and said, what do you think if I do it on a donkey? And I said, well, you're never going to get in. And he said, I'll be right back. And then he's like, all right, I'm in, because they had a certain number of spots, and he got one. And then he said, all right. And I said, man, you're my friend, and I don't want you to stop being my friend. So if you want to do this, I'll do it. I'll get a bike built for you, but this is a terrible idea that I would do. But I'm not telling you that you should do this. And he's a little crazy like me, so he just said, I'm in. I totally want to do this. And he was the first person to do it. I went out and watched him, and that was a very proud day for me to see him, just race it. And he paced somebody, so he wasn't really trying to go for a buckle time per se. And so it was kind of a different creative brief at the time, but still really proud of what he did.
Fatty, that was 2016, in fact, and I remember that specifically because as I was rolling down 6th Street, I mean, I'm a bike looker. I like checking out of the people's equipment. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw some drop bars going down 6th Street, and we're going like 35 miles an hour, and of course you're shivering cold. And I look over and I double take and I look to my right and I see, oh, that's somebody on a rigid drop bar bike. And I looked down and I looked at the down tube and it said rodeo on the side. I'm like, and I took a mental note at the time. I remember, went, wow, somebody's out here tackling the Leadville Trail 100 on a full carbon gravel bike. How cool is that? Never did in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be doing a podcast on this race and later talking to the designer and owner of the company of that bike. But there you were, Stephen. You had successfully seen one of your bikes get through the Leadville Trail 100. Now fast forward us. Now, how did you find yourself on your bike, your trail donkey, and at the start line at the Leadville Trail 100?
My sort of going back return was very unplanned, which I would prefer it to be that way. I think if I had known that it was coming, I would have been stressed out, because when you get in and you get really serious about training and this is the big show, I need to do my best. But on this attempt, Chris, who was one of the guys that was in that squad that did it with me, he just texted me and said, hey, I'm going to do the 50 this weekend. And if I can get a coin, can you build me a donkey in time for the 100? And I think it was only really a couple weeks later after the 50 that year.
It's about a month. Yeah.
Okay. And then I thought, well, yeah, I think maybe we could. We had prototypes of the newest version that were being sent over to the United States, and we had one of each size coming. And I said, I think we can get that frame here in time. And I was already on the prototype of the new one myself. And then as soon as he said that, I thought, this is just such a great bad idea. Like, it's this weekend. The 50 is this weekend. I'm going to go too. And then I turned around to Nick, who was nearby, and I said, hey, you want to do the 50 with me and try and get into the 100? And he's like, I've never even done a mountain bike race. And he said, I'm in. And David, who's a customer, same thing. You know, he was planning to do the 50. So I took my donkey to the 50. Everyone else was on a mountain bike, but I put duct tape over all the logos.
You did the Silver Rush on a gravel bike.
Yeah, I did.
Hadi, I don't know if you understand exactly what he's saying here. I've done the Silver Rush a couple of times. Leadville 100 is hard. The Silver Rush is way more difficult mile for mile and way more technical and way rockier and way steeper.
It's brutal.
It is. Yeah. I'm stunned.
It was all of that. So, and I was scared. So I hid the bike because I actually thought the people would be angry at me at the starting line for like, you know, there's this guy and he's going to crash and he's going to take a bunch of people out and that bike's going to break in half. So I put flat bars on it. I had like, you know, XT drivetrain and, you know, it's a rigid fork and it had mountain bike tires on it, you know, 2.1s. So it looked somewhat like a mountain bike, and not a lot of people really noticed what was going on other than they were like, oh, that's, you know, it's pretty badass to be riding a rigid bike here. So I did it, and, you know, it went actually really well. And I got, you know, we all got our tokens out of that. So whatever, I don't know what my time was, but however we all finished, we all ended up at the end of the day with 4 tokens for the 100. So that was mission accomplished.
So you all podiumed?
No, you don't have to podium at Silver Rush. It's your brackets, your age, or at least at the time, it was how many in your bracket, and then what percentage of the top finishers could. And I got it. You know, I was like on the bubble there. I don't know if I was maybe 10th or 14th out of 12 or 20. So I wasn't at the pointy end, but I was close enough that I got it. And then there was also, there was kind of a raffle thing where you could also raffle. So I think one of the guys got a raffle entry, or 2 of them did. But they were all on mountain bikes. I was on the donkey. And that was really, to me, the first test. So as this was all coming together in my head, to me, it was about, can we prove as a tiny company how vetted our platform is, and kind of answer that question to ourselves and other people. Is this thing any good? Or is, this up and coming nobody bike brand that doesn't have like a really deep reputation? How can you really show people we're going to do things on this bike that probably you won't, and it'll survive? And that was, to me, what the creative brief was for doing the 50 and then trying to get into the 100. So it was definitely a very personal project.
I had a similar personal project with Leadville, but mine just involved setting up a traditional hardtail rigid. So I went out, bought a carbon fork for my 29er, put that on. And my thinking was, look, I think I could, Leadville itself is not technical from a single track, dropping in, jump, lots of rocks and roots type of thing. It is technical in the fact that you're going to get beat up. And I think that's where the suspension argument comes in, when folks say, you need at least a fork up front to tackle this thing. But my thinking always was kind of in the same vein as yours, Stephen, is that I think Leadville can be done and done well without all the suspension pieces. So I built a 29er, a rigid 29er, geared, but I was flat bar. I wasn't taking advantage of the drop bar situation where you can get down low and truly take a rigid bike and make it excel where you want to excel, which is getting low, getting tucked, getting moving. And then I just went with regular, mount. In fact, I went with fatter tires than normal to try and gain a little suspension back. But I want to know how you specifically set up the trail donkey for Leadville.
Well, I didn't have a lot of options at the time. There are a few more options now than there were. But so the donkey will take a 650 by 2.1 or even a 2.2, although I didn't know that at the time. So I put a 2.1 on. It's like a Maxxis, maybe a Maxxis Pace. And that was as big as the frame I knew it would fit. And then I put a dropper post on because I really wanted to get the bike out of the way on the technical downhills and, not feel like it might put me over the bars if I did something wrong. And then there's a company called Redshift that makes a suspension stem. It really, on a flat bar, it will flex maybe about 15 millimeters, on a drop bar about 20, because there's, more lever. And that, very little travel, right? We're talking about 100, 150, whatever on a modern mountain bike, much more. But just taking the edge off of an impact was everything for setting up a rigid bike. Anywhere that you could put a control point that, hurt less if you really, went off the rails. That was what I was trying to do. So there wasn't much. That was it. Now you have suspension droppers or just suspension posts. And then, of course, you still have the Redshift. And there are even micro front suspension forks for gravel bikes now, which would not be a bad idea. But I had what I had, and we all set our bikes up essentially identically with just the suspension stem and the dropper.
How about gears? How were you geared?
A very mountain bike. I mean, it was a mountain bike drivetrain. So I think maybe we had a 34 up front, one by XT Di2, and then we had the E13 946 cassette. And that was clutch, and we can get back to that later. But I really do believe that a lot of people go into Leadville with the wrong gearing, and they spin out on the flats and the downs, which is where I made up a tremendous amount of time on people. Yeah, that's just a proven drivetrain. We've run that for years. And, you get a really huge range. A 946 actually has more range than an Eagle cassette mathematically. So, we're able to get up the hills, and then we're able to go really fast on the descents, where allowed, which is not always on a rigid bike.
So all three of us have done this on one rigid bike or another. So, I don't know. I think we all need help, but there's.
Well, how many times have you guys done it?
Well, I've done it 23. So
okay, there you go. All right.
I've tried every combination. So
I'm 5 starts, 4 finishes. Yeah.
And I think that that's a really big part of this conversation. So we get people now that ask, I'm in Leadville now and I want to get the bike and I think I should do it on a gravel bike. I'm a gravel biker, or I'm a roadie, and I'm, this is my thing. And I think a really big answer to this question is, well, how many times have you done Leadville already, or have you done it at all? And what sorts of things have you done on a drop bar bike off-road previously? Because I don't think that this would be my entree into Leadville if I had never done it before, because the first question you ask at Leadville is, can I do it at all? And then, question number 2, how well can I do? Can I break 9 and get the big buckle? Maybe question number 3. But there are these tiers of things that you kind of want to know if you can stack up to, what we all know what the standard is in terms of what the pros can do. And that was my first question. And then I felt like I answered that. I knew I could be about, 8:30 on my mountain bike. And that was just good enough of a time that I felt like I don't need to go back and find out if I could do an 8. I'm just happy. So it's that I've done it, and now what can I do to keep it interesting? And I think that you guys are proof of the same thing, that you probably, I don't know, did you do it rigid your first time?
No. My first Leadville, not that's not what this episode is about, but my first was on an Ibis bow tie.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So the wackiest full suspension bike ever built. Yeah. But I'm very interested in your day on the donkey. Tell us about the whole race.
Yeah. Well, it starts with a lot of really weird looks at the starting line, and some out loud criticism which surprised me. Just
tell us about that. I
don't know why anybody needs to be negative about any of this. I don't think I'll ever stop being surprised. There's so many styles in cycling, and one person's style doesn't necessarily need to interfere with somebody else's. But when we see something that we wouldn't do, we feel like we need to, kind of opine negatively on it sometimes. And so we got some of that where you just hear people walk by and go, oh, can't wait to hear, how that one goes, or, you're never going to make it, and you're like, why are you doing this? All of these questions. So some people were like stoked, as in, this is amazing, why? And other people were like, don't get in my way. Which is fair, as is it St. Kevin's, that's a pretty big funnel in the beginning. And, there's 2 lanes and you don't want some dude fooling around that, made the corral somehow, but he's not keeping up with everybody else. So maybe there's some fairness in in that response, but, it wasn't overwhelming. And you're by your friends. We were all in basically the same corral. So I had my friends, and, I don't know, it's freezing. They say, go. You go, you're freaked out. And my number one is don't crash, don't DNF, don't break yourself or your bike, right? Don't embarrass yourself. That's job one. And so I don't really tend to take huge risks, even just on the road descent and any of that. Where it starts to thin out because you've done it once. So I just thought I'm going to try and keep up with my peers in the beginning. And, you hit that first climb, and it gets a little plugged up, and, the bike was fine. There's really not much remarkable about that part of the race other than, the bike climbs really well. It's light, it's nimble. You don't have a rear shock. If the terrain is mellow enough, you can get out of the saddle and climb instead of trying to stay seated and keep that rear wheel engaged. So there were some nice things about that. And I did a bunch of passing going up, up St. Kevin's when it started stringing out. As soon as you get over that hump and you start to get under maybe that flat spot and then it starts descending again, people will just rip on a mountain bike, right? You can let your brakes go. And if you're on a full suspension, your bike will just go from point A to point B and mostly float across, anything in your way. And you do not have that luxury on a rigid bike. You are so engaged in picking your line, and you have to leave a margin of error for when things go wrong and you whoops, bad line, hit something, didn't see that. So you can really only descend at, let's say 80%. I don't really know how to put a number on it, but you have to leave this margin for, if you're at 10 out of 10 descending on a mountain bike, it might save you from disaster because it's so capable, the suspension in particular. And you've got these wide bars with wide leverage, but on a narrow bar, drop bar bike with nothing, you feel the bumps. And when you mess up, it's pretty savage. So I just back off a little bit and I coach myself beforehand that you will get past on the downhills. It will be a little bit upsetting because you just passed all those people on the uphill, and you're just giving time away. And then my rationale was, I'm not doing this for them. I already know what I'm capable of at Leadville. This is for me, and all these people are here around me, but I'm doing this for myself, and I want to find out what I can do. And if you can talk yourself down out of that panic situation where you feel yourself getting past, you'll keep it under control and you won't make stupid decisions about, I'm going to let my brakes out and I'm going to get this thing wide open. So, but you know what, also you get to the pavement. I just dropped into a super tuck on my top tube and got really narrow on my bars. And I don't know, I didn't look at my max speed, but just blowing by people on that paved descent, like they were standing still. So I'm like, hey, there's that guy again that passed me on the thing, and now we're back. And I thought, all right, is this how it's going to be? This yo-yo all day long. Then you get to, is it the backside of Powerline?
Sugarloaf climb. Yeah, the Sugarloaf climb. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a nasty terrain instead of the rock surface there. And I would say that to me is the most annoying part of the course, both up and back, out and back. It's more like shale. I don't know what it is about the rocks, but less comfortable, less able to just put the power down and crank. You really have to finesse, and your bike is saving you from none of it. So again, you just kind of grit it out and it's fine. I don't know, how my time stacked up there. I didn't get past as many people. I don't think, I just kind of hung. Then you get to the top and then, it's Powerline. And my understanding is the Powerline has changed.
There was some grading on the very bottom side, the very bottom of it, last half mile, quarter mile of it. So a lot of the ruts are gone now, but that's the only change. Yeah.
And that power line was very intense. I was flying, in terms of my comfort zone. And Chris was ahead of me at this point, and I caught up to him, and I think he said, "I can't feel my hands." And then he disappeared behind me. And I felt bad. That's another interesting thing about all of this, is that I spent the whole race worrying about everybody else, because I just thought, Chris is a much better mountain biker than I am. And he's more into taking risks. And I thought, if he gets hurt doing this because he was doing it on my bike, I'm never really going to be able to forgive myself. So we talked about that beforehand. It's not worth the risk. We don't need to impress anybody. Do this for you. And don't do anything for me. So I passed him, and it was just violent. I just remember the really power line, the upper part of power line was just violent and fairly uncomfortable. But you don't want to get past, and you go for it. And I made it to the bottom, and there were no incidents. And I will say that in retrospect, I'm pretty sure, and I can fact check this later, I think my mountain bike time and my trail donkey time were absolutely identical down power line. I don't have them memorized, but I remember going back and looking and just being unable to believe that somehow I put up the exact same time on that descent on the donkey. And what this tells me is that I'm a terrible mountain biker, because I should have been so much faster on the mountain bike, but it was the same. So I don't have any way to explain that. It just is what it is. I found that out obviously after the end of the race. And then I knew at the bottom that it was really just time to get to work. This is my time, right? Because you've got, 25 miles of rolling, fire road, a little bit of pavement, and pace lines. That's all about efficiency. And I'm like, okay, this is me. This is this bike now. And you've heard this. Mount Leadville, it's just too smooth. It's like road bike court, and you're like, fine. All right. Well, is it that? All right. We're going to find out. And that was really fun.
Yeah. I'm sure there you were attracting folks who wanted to draft off you flies to pie, right? Here's a guy on a drop bar bike who has, as you have mentioned, a gear range that allows you to really put some power and speed down on the relatively flat section. I'm sure you must have had folks trying to get in your draft constantly for that. It's about 20 miles from basically when you drop into the fish hatchery to the Twin Lakes Dam.
And yeah, you're right. And you have that win factor. Will there be win? Will there be not? And I think I was trying to say to myself, don't get too excited here, which is something that I do. And you overcook it, and then you're in this hole in terms of overexertion. So I thought, all right, I think I can go pretty fast here. I found a pace line. But what would happen is the pace lines were never really going fast enough. And it's not like I'm going pro speeds, right? But this is relative to your starting corral. And I think I was with the red people. So relative to my peers, I wanted to go faster at this point. So I would find a pace line and I would roll with them for a while. And then I would, this is not fast enough. And then I would drop them all. And then find another pace line, on the horizon or a little ways up, and say, all right, I'm going to go up to that one now. And that'll be like my little carrot on the stick. Just get from this one to the next one. And when I get there, I'll tuck in a little, I'll do a rotation if we're doing that, and I'll rest. And then I'll go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And, there are no issues with the course being technical there. It's just really fun and fast. And that was where I made time, I think, if I was making time. Yeah.
The Century League Leadville Silver Rush 50 is off in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Way down, riders, go get that point. Hustle.
Fatty, I don't know if it's a pandemic thing or just an age thing, but this year is flying by for me. It's hard to believe we are less than 4 months away from that shotgun blast at the 2021 Leadville starting line.
Yeah, I had to just check the calendar when you said that. And imagine our listeners are checking the calendar right now and getting a little pit in their stomachs too. It's time to get to training, our nutrition, and our kits in order for 2021.
That's where our kit partner DNA comes in. It is not too late to get your team, family, or company kit created for the big race, but you should not be putting this task off.
Yeah, there's no reason to put it off anyway, because DNA Cycling makes it so easy to get a beautiful, hand-sewn Italian jersey designed, created, manufactured, and delivered just for you. They've got it nailed down to a great 4-step process. First one is you go to DNA's custom catalog and you pick the items you want to customize, including everything from jerseys to arm warmers to jackets to bibs to socks, everything you could want.
And second, DNA designers work with you and design that kit so it looks perfect. They provide 3 revisions to ensure you get exactly what you want. Once you've done that, DNA creates a custom micro store online so you can share it with your friends to finalize quantities and get them to pay for their gear. DNA even has the option to get you a fit kit to ensure your gear fits your team properly.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. You don't want folks winding up with the wrong fitting kit on race day. And finally, your order goes to production in DNA's factory in Italy. 6 to 8 weeks later, you and your team are in your dream kit. I've worked with DNA to do all of this numerous times now, the whole process, and they are really good at what they do.
And getting started is easy. Just head to dnacycling.com and choose the custom apparel option. Be sure to let them know, too, you found out about DNA from the Leadville podcast.
Hadi, I am a big believer in patterns. When something works really well, not just for me, but for practically everyone I know, I stop thinking, this is something I like, and start thinking, hey, this company's really onto something. And that's kind of how I feel about Shimano. Time after time after time, my drivetrains, my pedals, my brakes, my shoes, my saddles, everything I get from Shimano just excels.
Yeah, you're not the only one who feels that way, Fatty, which is part of why Shimano has been able to make bike gear for 100 years. They've developed a special site commemorating a century of development, and it's worth checking out. It's interesting to see the mix of bike and fishing equipment they have there.
Yeah, just go to Shimano.com, and they've got a link to the 100th anniversary site there. It's pretty amazing to walk down memory lane. They've got sort of a virtual museum with photos and videos of the first Dura-Ace group back in 1973, the SPD pedal, which has been around since 1990, believe it or not, the Dior XT derailleur from 1992, and a lot more. It is a lot of fun looking at the roots of all of these products that we're still using today.
Right. Knowing the pedals and shifting we use have been refined for more than 3 decades gives you a sense of why the current Shimano gear is so dialed in.
Yeah, it's a fun walk down memory lane. I think any cycling nerd would enjoy. And it gives you a great appreciation for Shimano right now. Check out the historical and new Shimano gear at bike.shimano.com.
Our guest is Stephen Fitzgerald, owner of Rodeo Adventure Labs and one of a small group to gold buckle on a gravel bike at the Leadville Trail 100. Now he takes us through Twin Lakes outbound, and the fun really begins. Well, that gets us out to Columbine, and I would imagine the lower section, the tree section, probably goes fine, but let's focus in on that upper section, Stephen, the rocky, when you come out of the trees, both up and down. Give us the story up there. How did you and how did the Trail Donkey do in that very crucial area?
I mean, to put it shortly, not well. That is not the good spot to be on this bike at all. And I think going up, maybe if I was a better climber, I could be, but once you hit to that single track, you're up above tree line and you're at the end of this long climb, you're already a little bit dead. So all of your technical skills are pretty dulled. And I may have been walking some of that on a mountain bike or a rigid bike. So it's hard to say really if there was any real impact other than that I was tired and I eventually just got off and pushed for here and there and then got back on intervals, made it up to that. Funny story from the aid station. The lady says, "What do you need?" When I get there, and I was like, "Salt, I think," because I was a mess. And she gets a big thing of Morton table salt and just pours it on a spoon. And she goes, how much? And I said, I don't know. And so I just ate this huge heaping serving spoon of salt. And I thought, this must be what people done, because she's manning the thing and she knows what people should be doing. And this is what she handed. So I ate this huge teaspoon of salt. It was nauseating. Turn around, go back down. And I am the slow guy holding people up at the top of Columbine. And I was very polite. I knew that I was that guy. And if I heard anyone, I was off the trail. Just anyone who wanted by me, you can go by. I'm sorry, I'm here. I don't want to ruin your time. And, that hurt. It hurts on a conceptual, just like I beat these people to the top. And now here I am, getting destroyed. I feel like I was around the top 100 up, to the top of the climb. So I felt really good about that. And then to watch that time go away, when you should really be enjoying the fruits of your labor is hard. It's difficult. Get back down, out of that to the road. There wasn't as much to talk about. You go slow, you pick a line. It's kind of like riding downstairs sometimes. And I knew it was coming, and it was, I got it over with. It's kind of the chore.
While you're up in this technical section, give us a little primer then on how to do this, or how you do that. Are you getting the drops guy when you're going down through? I'm talking about descending through technical sections. Are you in the hood? How do you like to? What do you do body position wise, dropper post wise, to get through these sections?
So your body's your suspension. So you need to get your seat at least a little bit out of the way, if at all possible. So your seat's at least partially down. If you put your dropper too far down, some gravel dropper posts go down about 50 millimeters. And then I had a mountain bike one, which went down about 100, 110 millimeters. So it would go all the way out of the way. But that can be too low, and you can end up burning your legs out just trying to stand up. So you need to get your seat part of the way down so that you can suspend yourself above the bike. I descend in the drops. I've found that if you're really doing mountain biking on a drop bar bike, there's an awkward thing going on in drop bars and gravel where the stem has certain clamp specs to keep from crushing your handlebar. But those clamp specs aren't enough on a lot of bars to keep your hoods from slipping if you descend on the hoods because of all that leverage. So the really safe thing to do is to descend in the drops where you have a tremendous amount of grip on the bar. You're not accidentally going to come off, and your bar won't slip. And if you've ever slipped a bar on a descent, you think you're going to die. So I've just trained myself. If it's a technical descent, get in the drops. Brakes work amazing. Hydraulic disc brakes, basically riding a mountain bike. And yeah, that was it. Look for the line.
By the way, speaking of handlebars, let me ask one thing about handlebars. Were you at this point, this is 2018, were the flared handlebar thing, was that a thing yet? Did you have those on?
I did. Yeah. And for many years, it was probably an Easton flared handlebar was my favorite shape. And they have a mild flare, not a really, really wide one, just a little mild one. So your hoods still feel straight up and down in the hoods. But when you get in the drops, you do feel like you have more leverage. And that is a significant ergonomic upgrade for doing this kind of riding. Flared bar. I don't know about like these mustache bars and these really aggressive flares. That starts to annoy me. So I'm kind of like a little bit of flare kind of guy.
I'm a 24 degree flare guy, and I love, it gives, I can still run the hoods at almost my normal road width and feel like I get the arrow when I need it. So I can get down, get low, get in kind of an arrow position in the hoods. And then when it's time for some leverage or some time for some tech skills, the flare kind of sticks out there, widens me out a little bit, gives me a little more front wheel control and bike control in the drops, where, like you, Stephen, I feel totally more comfortable in a technical situation when things are getting rough in those drops as far as keeping control of that bicycle. I imagine at the top of Columbine, you going down at least, you want to be in your drops if you're on a gravel bike.
Yeah. And there's a trend now towards absurdity that people have really begun to ask, what's the widest possible drop bar you can put on a bike? And it's gotten, in my opinion, dumb. So we do actually try and ride everything at this company before we recommend stuff. So I put stupid wide bars on my bike and rode them around and thought, this is not my jam. Other people appear to be really into it because you could, they're so wide. It's almost like a mountain bike bar width on the tops, but then you have these drops on the end. Maybe that's right for you. I felt like I was driving a school bus. It just didn't work for me. But But so I do size up a little bit. Like, if you're normally at 42, I might go 44, or I'm normally at 44, so I go 46. And, and that's not exaggerated, but it does give you a little bit of that. So, yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So we get down off of Columbine somehow. Did you pass people once you got back in the tree section? So you're giving up spots in the rocky section, come down. In the tree section, what happens there? I imagine you'd pick up some spaces, no?
Well, the first time I did it, I had a really bad flat on the descent of Columbine, and I am emotionally damaged from that experience. And I just was like, I don't want to throw all this away. In a lot of ways, I'm through the hardest part of the course, and I can go reasonably fast here, but I don't really want to push it. And Columbine does have little mystery rocks in it. And you probably don't realize this when you're on a mountain bike because it's taking care of all that. But you pay attention and you realize that maybe once every 30 seconds, there may be a larger than average rock there. And I started to get a little paranoid about, I'm not going to hit one of those. I'm not going to ruin this. So my Columbine time on the double track is probably not spectacular at all. But so what? So I thought, maybe I'm going to give up 5 minutes here or 3 minutes. I don't know what the math would be. But again, it's at this point, it's better just to have a happy ending than it is to find these marginal gains on a really, poor section of the course.
I've had that same thought so many times when I've done the Leadville 100. That is, once I get out of the goat trail area and you're on the main road again, it's a huge relief where there's more work to be done, obviously, but you know that you've done all the stuff that feels like it could really kill your bike. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure that it was that times 3 when you're on a gravel bike.
Yes. Yeah. I was so happy at the bottom of Columbine. I just thought, yes, all right, we're still here. And actually, my mind immediately went to, I'm a really sensible guy, but I know some of the guys I ride with are a little bit wild, and I hope everybody makes it down that okay, because...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got people that you're kind of, that you've got some responsibility for. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How are the kids? And they were fine as it turns out, but I didn't know that at the time. So I think, right, so you get down to the bottom of that, and to me, it was time to get to work. So I had this, I don't know how you guys do this. I never really tell anybody about what my real goal is. I'm too insecure. So I'm kind of like, I just gotta break 9. That would be amazing. But really, I really wanted to see if I could break 8. And I didn't know if it was possible. But I wanted that. And you start doing hypoxic math with yourself where you're like, do I have an hour? Do I have 2 hours? And I started thinking, all right, I need to go to work now. And I know I've conserved enough through some of these classic these spots where you kill yourself on the course in terms of overexertion. I think I'm going to make it through, and I've been smart, and now I can spend some of those matches on the ride back. And I felt like I was just on fire on the fire roads back towards Powerline, just almost vindictive. Like when I would see people, I would be like, I'm going to get you. These are...
Remember me?
These are internal monologues, right? Yeah, there was some of that. There was some of I'm coming back and I'm clawing back. And, some people have really distinctive kits. So you're like, I know you. Here I come. Yeah. And you want to pass them at high speed to demoralize them. That's mean. But that was also a thing that I was trying to do. But I will, as an aside, I did notice that probably a lot of these riders were easily as strong as me, but a lot of these guys seem to be spun out. And I think a lot of people were running 32 front rings with Eagle. And I was on so that would be a 32 with a 10. And I was on a 34 with a 9. So my final high-speed drive gear was significantly better than theirs. And I had drop bars, right? So... nothing to do with how it's just gear helped there. And you could do that on a mountain bike. And I've coached people, don't put so much of a grain of gear on your bike that you can't make speed when you finally are able to. And I think that helped on the way back. Cause I same thing, just worked my way through, many, many groups of riders. And that was a really fun sort of section of the course again. And then, Powerline.
Any pace lines on that section from Twin Lake Dam back to the to the pipeline?
Things are pretty blown up, by that part of the race. So you get, 2 or 3 and then maybe 1 or 2. And I definitely would catch up. And if I was going to take a draft them, then I would later offer to pull and try and break even on the group dynamic and then leave again to the next one. But those drafts that you get on the way out are huge because the race hasn't broken up yet. And it's much more fragmented on the way back.
All right, we're at the crux of the race. It's the power line climb coming home. I mean, this is it. Everything comes down to this last 20-something miles. Take us up and over that, baby. It's really probably the crucial moment.
Yeah. I wanted to just ride power line and, I cleaned it. But I got to that really steep, I don't know what it is, a couple 100 feet. And I just said, I am working so hard to stay on the bike right now. I can walk this fast. Mm-hmm. So I just got off and, you're on mountain bike here. So it wasn't an issue of gear. The bike really, I was neither here nor there probably because those lower sections were pretty buff. The steeper sections, they're not really that technical. They're just really steep. So got up that, really tried to pace, but very aware that I was on kind of the bubble of maybe being able to make this, secret goal that I had. So pushing pretty hard to get to the top. And all I could remember from the first time was that just Columbine is never over. So just give up hope and put your head down. And then someday you'll get there, but don't think about the top. And that was really the strategy. And climbing Columbine is nowhere near, it's none of the intensity of descending it. It was fine.
Mm-hmm.
The bike wasn't a factor.
Do you mean Powerline right now?
Sorry. Yeah. I get them a little dyslexic on the names there.
Well, Powerline's a harder one.
Yeah, it's harder, but it's in terms of being technical or having any of those factors, it's a little bit unremarkable. Once you get over that crux, that hump, and it starts to level out a little, you just kind of go to work and try not to blow up.
But the descent,
you get to the top.
Yeah. Well, the descent from down Sugarloaf, that's my biggest question on that bike for the day. That is hard on a mountain bike. How did that go?
I was in a bad mood. Just kind of when will this be over? And this is in the way. And it was very jarring and just really thinking about where is the line the whole time? How can I find the least abrasive line down this thing? I just remember, it's uncomfortable and it's there. And I just remind myself, I did this to me. So,
I have no one to blame.
I have no one to blame for this. And I'm happy to be here. Things are going well. I just need to get through this. And by the way, on the other side of that, it's a paved climb. So you have this thing to look forward to if you can just get to the bottom of that.
As a reminder, Stephen, you're on 650Bs, correct? 2.1s, right?
Yeah.
And do you happen to remember your tire pressure that day? I know that's kind of
I'll bet you it was in the mid 20s. I don't think I wanted to go that much lower, but somewhere 20, 25.
On the Sugarloaf or any of the other descents, did you ever feel a rim at any time? In other words, hit a rock, feel a rim?
Yeah, I probably did hit my rim a couple of times. And I feel like I've told people that you should, if you're trying to find the perfect pressure to drop our bike or rigid, you should probably hit your rim once. And then you'll know that you used all of your travel, right? Your suspension travel, which is your tire. And if you never hit your rim, then you should have gone a little lower. The rim didn't break. You don't want to pinch flat and all of that. But I think, I did learn to mountain bike in the 90s when you did have to have finesse. And I think that comes that comes back and you ride that way. And it's a bit of an advantage. So when you hit your rim, it's a shock because you made a mistake, not because you aired out something and landed flat on this bike.
Hottie, I think I've told you before that Jake Pantone of Envy once told me during a ride, he said, I aim to hit my rim twice per ride.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
That's
cool.
how he sets his pressure. It's like, if he didn't hit it twice on the ride, his pressure was too high, and he uses that to calibrate. Kind of interesting.
There you go.
So once you were past down at the bottom of Sugarloaf, the rest of the race, and there's still a significant amount there. You still got, I think, 15 miles left in the race.
Yeah.
It is all to your advantage at that point on that
Right.
bike, I would say, right?
I would say St. Kevin's, right? Going down that.
Yeah.
So there's water bars on St. Kevin's, I think, right? And
on the Hagerman's Road, that is super.
It Hagerman's? Okay.
That is super waterboarded.
It's washboard,
Washboarded. Sorry, waterboard's a completely different thing.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So it's not the washboard from cars breaking. It's those little lips they build to divert water off of the trail. And we'll get to that. So back on the pavement. Yes, that is theoretically all to your advantage, almost, except for that descent. As soon as I hit the pavement, it's a little bit of a bat out of hell vibe, and like really wrung out everything on that road climb. And I remember seeing someone ahead of me on drop bars, and I was deeply jealous that like I'm going to be the first drop bar. You know, I didn't know, but like I saw him and I thought he can't beat me. So that was very motivating up the climb. And then when I caught to him, I realized it was a drop bar front suspension 29er. So it was a specialized mountain bike with drop bars on it. And then I thought, well, that doesn't count. Like, I mean, it kind of counts, right? But it's the rigidity and the smaller wheel and the whole package. And this guy had some pretty, that front suspension fork. So I gave myself a pass there. And anyway, that was all fine. I think the only surprise about that part of the course is that it's longer than longer than it is in my head. And you think as soon as I get up this little climb, I got a downhill, but you've got all those intermediate rollers and really gradual climbing. And those are a little bit painful to have to keep enduring. So that descent with the water bars, those things can pitch you. If you hit them too fast, they can toss you. And maybe on a mountain bike, everybody's getting air, which would be that would be really fun. But to me, it's about how can I keep my bike from leaving the ground and not get thrown over the bars, by the jump. So I had to kind of be careful there. Again, you can't crash this late. You've done all this work and you're a little bit in self-preservation mode. Get to the bottom of that, and then it's just like wide open panic. You can see the watch and you know how much time you have left. And it seemed like maybe I could make it. And I think I put in some pretty big digs all along those flats, all the way to the base of, what's the final climb called? Does it have a name?
Boulevard.
Yeah. And I think I did the math and I realized I'm barely going to miss it. And
I hate that math.
I do too. And I think when I knew that, I just made peace with it. And I thought, this has been a good day. This is a very chill road climb. This is in the bag. I'm not going to kill myself. I can't do it anyway. Is it 8:15 or is it 8:10 or is it 8:05? Doesn't really matter anymore. It's not 7:59. So who cares? So, there were some people that drafted me and then sprinted around at the end. I thought that was rude, but they were like, yeah, there's a road bike to follow up the climb. This is perfect. And they so it was great. It was a great way to finish the race. It's always really emotional for me finishing something that hard. Like you got to hold it in and you got to just shut yourself up and then you do it, you do the thing and you're done. And there's just so much relief. So that was it was just wonderful to finish and just to know that like, this is my bike. I made this exist, and this is all. It's kind of proud. Like Dad feels, and then immediately, within seconds, just is everyone else okay? And just really worried about what are the odds that the other three guys are all fine. Out there, different riding styles, equipment, etc. And I just started like worrying and trying to figure out how can I find out where they are? Can I look up the live tracking or, when did they go through this checkpoint type thing and see? And I called the photographer that we had hired, Natalie, and she said everyone that she had seen was fine. But you don't stop worrying until everyone's through. And the fact that Chris and Nick also made it sub-9, I was so happy for everybody. And David wasn't shooting for that sub-9. He was riding with his brother. It was kind of a brother race. And they were just doing it to be together. But when he made it through, his bike was not the new version. It had smaller tire clearance. So he was on maybe a 42 millimeter tire, or maybe a 45, but significantly smaller than ours. And, he made it as well. So it was a good day.
Yep. So a second gold buckle for you and an improved time. Now, how much credit do you give the trail donkey for your improved time at Leadville?
I'm going to be super honest and say I don't give it any credit. I don't know that I don't think on net it made me any faster. Again, I don't know how to measure it. Yeah, I did have a flat. It was very quick to fix on the mountain bike. And so I had a 20-minute spread. So it was faster, but maybe I was in better shape. Maybe the bike was a little bit more efficient. I just don't know how to, scientifically say this bike was faster. And I don't think you can honestly say that. I don't think you can say a gravel bike is faster at Leadville. I think a mountain bike with a front suspension fork is probably the fastest bike.
Well, let's go to this place then. What is possible on a drop bar rigid bike at Leadville?
Oh man.
I mean, I think in the back of your mind, you knew Sub-8 was there, right?
Yeah. I know who's, amongst my peers where I rate and then how I am never going to be a professional. If a professional were on a gravel bike, they could cut, an hour and a half off my time or, a lot of time. So at some point I just can't ride my bike any faster. I'm never going to be that good. But I don't think I would ever be a pro going into that race saying, this is my competitive advantage with which I'm going to, beat everybody else. So it's just not honest. But it's, Leadville is never ridden for just one reason. Maybe if you're a pro, it is, make your sponsors happy and, get a contract next year. But for everybody else, it's like, it's friends, it's fundraising, it's personal best, it's all of these, your buddy did it. And, so for me, it was a perfect, really fun, good experiment to do. And I would do it again. I don't think I'll ever go back on a mountain bike. If I go back, I'm going to see if I can break 8, which I think I could do. I think I would need to be just better, just train better, right? Do some bigger training days instead of this, hey, you guys want to see if we can get into Leadville next month, which is how we did it. So it's possible. And that would be, I think I'd just retire if I could break 8, I'd be like, that's it for me. I'll be so content.
So if someone comes to you and you specifically and says, I want a trail donkey so I can do the Leadville 100, what would you say to them? What would your answer be? Who should not?
That happens a lot. People, I wrote about the experience. I was very careful when I wrote it, not to just be like a whitewashing of, this is the thing you need to buy from us. And then, so people call and they say, I got in, and I want to get a donkey and I think this is a gravel bike course. And I say, well, tell me about where you currently ride your gravel bike. Do you ride it on single track? Do you mountain bike on it? Are you super curious about what the limits of the bike and yourself are? If you run the experiment, if this person's in Colorado, I've said, have you ridden every bit of single track in the front range on the bike already? Are you bored and you need something even more challenging? Have you already done Leadville and you are, looking for that next level thing? And I don't think anybody has said yes to all of that. So I say, well, what do you want out of it? Do you want a PR? Do you want to know how good you are? Well, then you should get on the fastest bike. And the fastest bike is a mountain bike, I think. So do that first. And then if you're hungry for more, then come back and do it on a donkey or whatever it is. There are a lot of bikes like a donkey out there now. And that seems to make most people go away, actually. And you would think I would want to sell every bike I can, but I actually don't want to sell that bike to the wrong person and have them angry at me and why'd I buy this thing? This is a horrible day. It could go south. And I think that's most riders. There aren't a lot of riders who are looking for arbitrary challenges. A lot of people who sign up for a competition are trying to figure out what they're capable of relative to the, what's been accomplished before them. So now, the minute someone says, I get it, I get what you're saying, this is a terrible idea and I want to get one anyway. And a couple people did, last year, but then COVID hit and they weren't able to do it. Then I'm like, hey, you're my people. And here's my cell phone. Call me when you need any tips, because I want to make sure you're successful when you do buy this bike. And let's get really nerdy about how to set this thing up. And then it's really fun, right? Because, when you do find that person who has that sensibility, then, you're talking to yourself a little bit. And it's very fun to get excited about this challenge with the right person.
Oh, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I never wanted to do the Leadville 100 on a gravel bike, and you've convinced me even more. I don't want to.
All right, good.
But I love that you did it, and that you are able to see both sides of the fence, and I love that the perspective that you bring to it. So thank you so much for sharing this story.
Well, thank you for letting me tell it. It was fun to see this come back. It's been a few years, and when you invited me on, I thought, wow, go back and read through what I wrote and thought, what a great day. That was a great day.
As a postscript to the interview, Steven said if he were lining up at Leadville this summer on one of Rodeo Labs' 3 gravel bikes, they have that carbon trail donkey we talked a lot about during the show. They also have a steel and tie version they call the Flanimal. Steven says he would board the tie bike because it can clear a 650 2.4. When you have no conventional mountain bike suspension, tires must do that job for you.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Hadi, I have spent a unreasonable amount of time on their site after our interview. Oh man, it won't be a Leadville, but I wouldn't be too terribly surprised if at some point you see me on a Flanimal. Before we close out the show, I want to jump back to the comment I made about Jake Pantone, saying he likes to set his tire pressure so he feels the rim touch the ground about twice per ride. I got to say in full transparency that I do not set my tire pressure that low. In fact, I freak out a little bit anytime I feel my rim bottom out.
Yeah, me too. But it does say something about Envy that Jake is so confident in their own product that he rides with low enough pressure to do that at all. What wheels is he talking about there? Yeah,
that's actually a great question because it's relevant. Jake is talking about the M6 wheels. That's what he was riding when he said that to me. And they have a rim shape with a really wide leading edge. It's a forgiving platform a tire can bottom out on. And it's very effective in reducing the likelihood of pinch flats practically to zero, honestly.
Yeah, the M6 is a strong and light wheel, and you can punish it with confidence. Of course, it's not as light as the M5, which means you have to make some decisions whether you want to race Leadville with wheels that are going to be fast everywhere and probably won't pinch flat at a reasonable pressure. Or are you going to go with a slightly heavier, beefier wheel like the M6 that you can run with very low pressure and extremely high confidence that you'll be just fine bombing down Powerline, Columbine, and Sugarloaf.
Yeah, it comes down to riding style. For me, I'm a timid downhiller. That won't ever change. And I just don't come close to approaching the limits of what the M5 wheels can do. And there are a few big, strong riders with enduro backgrounds who might want to hit those descents with everything they've got. I say to them, check out the M6 wheels.
Whatever your riding and racing style might be, Envy has got a wheel made for you and your preference. Check out the M5 and M6 wheels and the rest of the M5 and M6 components at Envy. That's ENVE.com.
Let's go ahead and wrap this episode. Big thanks to Steven Fitzgerald. He 100% sucked me into his story. I loved his candor. I loved his humor. I loved his insight. I tell you what, I am not interested in racing gravel, but I am interested in riding gravel. And I'm going to be spending a little bit more time on the Rodeo Adventure Labs website.
I'm not 100% certain we've answered whether most folks should race the Leadville Trail 100 on a gravel bike, but he's shown that it can be done at a very fast level.
Yeah, and with some great storytelling. I am loving the storyteller season we've got going on here, Hadi. Listeners, if you like it too, let us know. I am on Twitter as @FatCyclist, and Hadi is on Instagram @MichaelHoughton. Of course, we are both on Facebook, Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page. That's, I don't know what the URL is. Just search for it, guys. You can find it. Share the love on whatever media you can find. And if you want to have a conversation, I say join our Slack channel. You will find a link to it over at Leadville100podcast.com.
If you like the show, go over to Apple Podcasts. Give us that 5-star rating and please write a review.
Yep. Good luck at your training. Thank you for listening. And we will see you in under 4 months at the 2021 starting line.